Welcome to the party. I'm Sam Ekstrom of Locked On Sports Minnesota. Is Jordan Addison officially the Vikings wide receiver 2?
Hey, this is Arif Hasan with a Wide Left Substack. I'm excited for a disaster of a Chargers-Vikings game.
And I'm Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings, and I too am excited to see what the devil has in store.
Big show planned today on the Minnesota Football Party.
Locked On Sports Minnesota podcast. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota Football Party.
A brand new week on the Minnesota Football Party. So glad you've joined us today. I'm Sam Ekstrom. You just met Arif Hasan of Wide Left, Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings, and a big show planned for you today after the Vikings had a pseudo off week over the weekend. We're going to talk Kirk Cousins through 2 games. How does he stack up to the rest of the league, and how do we reconcile his performance with the turnovers and the Vikings 0-2 start? Also, Jordan Addison, one of the few bright spots. Is he your wide receiver 2 going forward? We'll talk about the struggles in the trenches that have led to this start. And of course, we'll get into the many NFC North choke jobs over the weekend as the division goes 0-4. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. It's America's #1 sportsbook. You can make every moment more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Please subscribe before doing anything. Hit that subscribe button. Help us get to 6,000 subscribers on YouTube. We're also free and available wherever you get podcasts, Roku, Amazon Fire, and the SiriusXM app. We're really glad you're with us today on the Minnesota Football Party on Locked On Sports Minnesota. Arif, Luke, hope you enjoyed your weekend. Let's reflect on Kirk Cousins right out of the gate. Kirk Cousins through 2 games. You've had now 4 days to think about his Thursday performance. Arif, where are you at with the quarterback? I know you haven't stopped thinking about it. Kirk Cousins through 2 games. Your thoughts?
He's playing pretty well. I don't know what else to add. He's playing good football. Obviously, not every throw is perfect. Obviously, the non-perfect throws are being punished pretty severely in the category of non-perfect throws, and you want him to clean up the fumbles. But I think for the most part, he is a huge asset to the team, regardless. Like, I think that you put it all together, he's a big net positive compared to other people at his position.
Feels a bit like the 2021 0-2 start, where Kirk was brilliant and the team lost both of those games. Braun, where are you at with Kirk?
Yeah, it feels exactly like 2021. Yeah, he's been good. The Eagles game was better than the Bucs game, I think. I think in the Bucs game he had some hesitations and things came late.
The timing was off, yeah.
Yeah, and the timing was better against Philadelphia. He was really in rhythm and feeling it against Philadelphia, and that made the offense really move great for as long as anybody could hold on to the ball. I think with him, the standard is, fair or not, it's going to be higher than it was in previous years, just because the level that Cousins has to play at to get another contract is higher, I think, than it's ever been for the level that like Kirk Cousins has to play at to remain a Viking. Like before, it just kind of had to, hey, you just have to make status quo look okay. But now there's something like more that has to happen because of the contract situation. I don't think he's at that level, but that's...
You don't think that he's at the... I mean, like, I think the
no,
contract
I genuinely think it has to be like MVP. Like, I really think it has to be insane. With what the Vikings have tried to do at quarterback elsewhere, they're looking to move on unless he makes it impossible to.
Okay, so if he plays at this level for the rest of the season, right? At this
so a 5,000-yard passer, right? Which is what I prophesied.
Yeah, right. With the
months ago,
a couple months ago, and we pushed back. But yeah, if
he could strip sacks and turnovers and kind of issues here and there,
0-17 record,
right?
I don't know if it's fair to Cousins to hold him to that highest standard, but I think the Vikings will.
Sure, if we include the strip sacks and the turnovers, and he plays at this level, his EPA would be like number 2 in the NFL behind like a Mahomes type player. He is like the production that he's putting together is like it's above Pro Bowl level. It's not all pro because we always have Mahomes, but it is above the typical level of play that we expect from a Pro Bowl passer. It's better than Justin Herbert. It's better than Jalen Hurts. You know, it's better than Lamar, even though Lamar had an outstanding game. Like in terms of just like expected points or in terms of the impact that his specific level of play is having. If he plays at this level, he should get another contract. And you know me, I'm not a huge Kirk guy, right? I do think the contract is going to be like very team results based. If they don't like win a playoff game, that's it. But like if he plays at this level, I think the Vikings win a playoff game. I think that's pretty fair.
Yeah. And I'm pretty much with you in terms of what I would do, but trying to predict the Vikings, I think that they hold. And I'll also say there's like a matter of consistency. If we get through 17 regular season games and they're all like this, and we don't have your kind of classic Kirk duds,
they're all like this.
Yeah, right. And then most of us will be dead,
right?
Which will be merciful.
Vikings fans from the rafters, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Hey, they've been up there before. But like if we get through a whole season without the like classic Kirk duds, that does kind of represent something different where it's like, oh wow, he like actually put together more consistency.
Because it's consistently inconsistent. That's the Kirk motto, right?
Exactly.
Like if you look at like the QBR line chart is always a roller coaster every year. There's peaks and valleys. And right now he's peaking very early. He did this in 2021 for 3 games. People talked MVP. Remember, they beat Seattle. People were saying Kirk's an MVP if they can keep doing. And then Browns game, Lions. He had 2 consecutive duds right after that, where the Vikings lost to Baker, barely beat the Lions, and it was really ugly.
I mean, that's like part of the deal, right?
Now, I don't want to go too far down this road because I don't think Jaron Hall had a very good preseason or training camp, but I've been very intrigued by the Sam Howell path because that's the 5th round pick that the Commanders have really invested in. They declared him the guy early on off of 1 start last year, and obviously what they saw in practice. And he's 2-0.
Critical, yeah.
They are justified so far in that decision to just roll the dice on a relatively unknown commodity. They're 2-0. Success rate's good. The completion percentage is pretty good. 3 TDs, 35 points yesterday. Almost lost on a Hail Mary. But a lot
of that's the enemy. A lot of that's like Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, and Antonio Gibson.
Okay, well the Vikings have guys too, Arif. I don't know if you've heard of them. The Justin Jefferson's pretty good.
Okay, but like I'm not saying it's because Sam Howell has good players. I'm saying the points were explicitly because of those good players. Kirk Cousins played well with good players. Sam Howell happened. like
fair to be skeptical.
It's
fair to be skeptical. It's just a very apples to apples situation that intrigues me.
Okay, well, I mean, Kirk Cousins is 4th in the NFL right now in adjusted net yards per attempt. Sam Howell is 19th. They're different.
And I've got the Cousins rundown. I mean, it's pretty good across the board for Kirk right now. 1st in TDs, 2nd in yards, 4th in Anya, 6th in QBR, 11th in sack rate, 13th in success rate. The fumbles, the turnovers, that kind of comes with the territory with Kirk. And I think those are tolerable.
Kirk hasn't had those fumbles for like 2 years, right? Like the fumbles were not a huge issue for the last 2 years of Kirk Cousins play. Maybe last 3 years. I'm trying to remember more precisely.
I think he's had like 7 and 9 the last couple of years, and those aren't lost fumbles. Those are just total fumbles,
right?
Yeah.
Which that's another element that we need to discuss when we're talking about Kirk Cousins and turnovers. He specifically, but also the Vikings overall, have just had awful turnover luck. Yeah. Like I don't know, it doesn't feel like he's had dropped interceptions. It feels like his interception was shockingly earned, right? Like it's
contested,
not like it was it wasn't like it was a good throw. I'm not saying that, but that's not usually an interception. And then every fumble from everybody has been lost, right? Which is, I mean, that's pretty nuts, right? This is
0% success, right?
Yes, it's literally 0%.
Yeah. Okay.
So like, that's That's like part of the discussion too. It's like even like when the Vikings were able to force the Eagles into a fumble, they didn't recover it. It's just like they can't win for losing, you know?
The potential swings in that game were insane. So you got a potential recovery at the 10 of Philly off that fumbled punt. You don't recover it. So there's points. Brandon Powell fumbles inside the 30. That's probably 3 or 7. Justin Jefferson has a first and goal at the half-yard line. That's 7. You fumble there. And what? There's still 2 more that I'm not even talking. Like Madison fumbles that, and actually the Madison fumble did not turn into points because they missed a field goal, I think. But still, I mean, how many did we get? Like 20? Like 20 points potentially swung on those fumbles.
I mean, yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you said, like one fumble, the defense gave up 0 yards and it was 3 points. Like, yeah, come
on. Jordan Addison is a bright spot. Let's talk about him after I tell folks about what's going on at FanDuel. FanDuel Sportsbook, new customers. Get $200 in bonus bets when you place a $5 wager. It's the kind of stuff they do at America's #1 sportsbook, the best place to bet NFL. $200 in bonus bets, win or lose, when you place a $5 wager. So sign up today. If you've been thinking about FanDuel, now is the time. Hundreds of ways to wager on football at FanDuel, college and pro. Very easy to use app, spreads, player props, over-unders, futures, plenty more. FanDuel.com/locked-on. Kick off the NFL season. Now we're into week 3. FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. FanDuel.com. All right. Jordan Addison threw 2 games, 2 touchdowns, 2 deep balls, extremely efficient as a wide receiver 3, in essence. We talked about this on the postcast with Ron Johnson, Luke Braun, and myself. KJ Osborne has gotten the wide receiver 2 snaps, I think 58 and 56. And Addison's gotten like 30 and 40. I mean, something like that. And he's made the most of them. KJ Osborne has drops. He's been inefficient. My theory on this, Arif, is that KJ Osborne, this is not BC Johnson. BC Johnson had very little equity in the league when he was given the wide receiver 2 job. KJ Osborne has shown a propensity to make big 3rd down, 4th down catches, contested catches. He can shake tackles, get yak yards. He's a guy, right? And he's
before
proven
Thursday, we would have characterized him as a reliable receiver.
He absolutely. So I'm not willing to straight up bench him after 2 weeks like BC Johnson, but these things do happen very, very quickly. And Jordan Addison has been much more efficient through 2 games. So does that workload shift get made to where it's been about 20 more snaps for Osborne? Does that get flipped in week 3?
Yeah, I think so. I think like it's not just that Osborne was disappointing, right? I mean, obviously that plays a role. It's that Addison has been playing very well. Both of those in combination would suggest that you would want to increase Addison's role. But that's in a vacuum. That's from the outside looking in. We don't know, for example, whether or not Addison has a particular package of plays that are designed for him where it would be very difficult to increase his particular role, right? I doubt it, but that's something to kind of keep in mind, right? Like there are some receivers in the NFL who are very efficient when they're on the field. And that's because there are plays designed specifically for them, and they, for whatever reason, cannot execute a full playbook. So you can't really increase their number of snaps all that meaningfully and maintain that level of production or even a good level of production, right? So that's something you have to kind of keep in mind is that, yeah, he's more efficient when he gets targets. What are the circumstances where he gets targets? Are those replicable when we expand that snap count? For Addison, I think that that's probably the case, but we need to be open to the fact that it might not be, especially because there are going to be situations where you want to give Cousins the capacity to kill the play and move into a run or vice versa. And for that, you might need a receiver in the slot who can block a little bit better than Addison is expected to be able to block. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind and consider. But I think that for the most part, given what we know, we would want to increase Addison's snap share. And it's not, again, just because Osborne had a couple of drops, which again, I mean, that sucks. I would not judge Osborne's ability or snap counts based off of one game, but I do think that the upside with Addison is there. And I think that we're getting to a point where we can say the reliability is enough for us to be like, yeah, let's let's flip that workload a little bit. Give Osborne a fair number of snaps, but give Addison a couple more opportunities.
Yeah. 22nd in yards per route run through his first 2 NFL games.
That's nice.
Osborne toward the bottom of the list, 0.74 yards per route run. It's not
That's
very
nice.
efficient. Braun, where are you at with this? I know you posed the question on Thursday night. What have you arrived at for this?
Yeah,
question?
that was kind of the instant reaction was to say like, hey, is it happening? And I think it will happen eventually, whether it is like immediately next week or not. I don't know. I was just looking at some like usage stats among other rookies, and Jordan Addison is like the 5th or 6th, I would say, most used rookie. He's 2nd in targets after Puka Nacua. I think I'm looking at PFF. I don't think they have week 2 up
count,
yet.
Man.
Well, yeah, that's crazy.
Vacuuming them. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think if you do just week 1, he'd be 4th in targets, which is probably more fair. But like,
makes sense.
He's getting used as much as anyone's using their rookie, and it just takes rookies a little bit to ramp up.
Hey,
Puka Nacua has 33
Jefferson is no Nacua,
targets.
right?
That's so
33 targets.
33 targets. That is hilarious.
Okay, there are so many 5th round rookies that just don't see that for the whole season. 5th round receivers that have a fair career that don't see that in any of their seasons. 33 targets.
And there's an explosiveness too that is giving a really fun dimension
again, right?
to the other side of the field. Yeah, with Addison. No, I'm not talking about Puka Nacua's explosiveness.
I was like, he's like 10 yards a catch. Let's relax.
No. But like, that is what we wanted. That's what we brought him in, right? What we brought him in to do is take the top off the defense and give them something deep to worry about that isn't Justin Jefferson specifically. And I think that can pay its other dividends. I think the game where Jordan Addison gets like 1 catch because the defense is actually paying attention to him is also a game where Justin Jefferson goes over 200, and that's exactly what we're after. I
was about to say, what, Justin Jefferson goes over 150 again?
Yeah.
But yeah.
150, no, that's conservative. He's going to put up 250 in that game, and that's exactly what we're after here.
Kirk
when
Cousins
he's over
5,000 yards, Jefferson 2,500 yards.
Yeah, exactly. Jefferson's still on 2K pace.
Good defenses are like 95 yards. It's like, hey, this defense shut him out basically last year, right? And like they gave him like 7 yards or whatever. And they're like, yeah, but we think 95 yards is the middle ground here. And then he beats it. It's crazy, dude.
That's got to be just a huge encourager too going forward, that these teams obviously know
are keying in on. Yeah.
They know what's going on. They know the deal.
Yeah.
And yet Justin Jefferson and, to KOC's credit too, schematically, they're making this work. And I think a lot of it's JJ beating doubles, but they're finding ways to get this guy the ball in the face of immense attention. That's huge. If that can continue, if this and KOC was even like gobsmacked after the game. He's like, this guy's doing stuff I've never seen before. If that continues, there's still a lot of upside for this offense.
2,600 yards right now. So,
yeah, 26. And there is such a path to 2-2. The Chargers at home, obviously you can win. The Panthers on the road, obviously you can win. Like if you're 2-2, you're right where the 2015 team was. You're right where the 2017 team was.
Yeah, I'm still looking for
parlay a couple wins together and bada bing.
No,
and you play the Chiefs with momentum. That'd be a huge build-up because momentum that totally matters, right?
The broader point you're making is it's a long season.
We can show the Chiefs something that they haven't seen in years. A wide receiver. They're going to be.
Oh no!
You want the Chiefs early this year? They're still figuring things out in a major way. They
to donuts they figure out this week. It's not. They're gonna.
They're still figuring it out by week 5. That's like as long as they've ever taken.
Yeah. But yeah, I agree, Sam, that you probably want them a little bit earlier than a little bit later.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think that the Vikings are more likely to go 2-2 than any other particular record to finish out the 4-game stretch. It sucks we don't have like a 16 game, so we can't do the neat 4 games, like quarter pole of the season thing.
Yeah,
Like,
we got to get to 18 soon, and then we can have like a third poll,
a third pole.
a half poll.
Ugh.
Okay, Addison good, Jefferson good, Kirk good, interior D line bad. I crunched these numbers.
Me,
this morning.
Jane, you Tarzan.
And I'm Kevin from The Office. Many small time make big time. Has a team ever disliked their trenches more than the Vikings apparently did this preseason? Like they jettisoned all of their young linemen, just got rid of them and signed guys off of waivers. And they got rid of like all those fringe D linemen we talked about, got rid of all of them except Jaquel and Roy. And the guys that they kept have amassed the following. Harrison Phillips, excellent. No problem with him. 3 pressures, 9 run stops. The other 3 combined, Bullard, Tonga, Lowry, 0 pressures through 2 games, 5 combined run stops. That's got to get better. Right, Braun?
Yeah, it's not great at all. And Jaquel and Roy being a healthy scratch, which I think if they could have that one back, they would change that. But obviously the situation with Christian Darrisaw was took up an active spot, and there's no way to see that coming. He re-aggravates the ankle injury after it's too late to go back and change it. Which that's now a thing to watch even closer. But so that kind of sucks. But like you had active for that game against the Philadelphia Eagles, the team most famous for just having bigger dudes and winning because of it. You had 2 guys dressed up that were over 300 pounds. That's nasty. Like, come on.
Rough.
That's really rough. And there were other like personnel things they did to like further lean into that, which they were just prioritizing coverage. They said, we're going to shut down Jalen Hurts. And if we shut down Jalen Hurts, somebody else has to beat us. And that somebody else was DeAndre Swift. And I guess that's the trade-off that they accepted. But if we're looking for a reason why they lost, it's Dean Lowry getting washed down the river horribly. Oh my goodness. The Dean Lowry tape is ugly.
Yeah, it
Kyrie's
looks like last
Tonga.
year's Dean Lowry tape.
I thought he had a bad camp, to be honest, too. I didn't have a great feeling on Lowry. I don't know. It was weird to me how much he rotated out of the first team. And I thought, like, this doesn't seem like a guy that they like are like in love with.
Did he take a lot of reps with the second team? Or was he just doing the
He
Harrison
rotated
Smith?
with the first team a fair amount.
Yeah. And maybe they were just getting a look at Jaquelin and some other guys.
Yeah, but was it just rotating out and resting, or was he rotating down to team 2? Because that's a different thing.
I thought he was rotating and keeping, like, there was a lot of rotation
down
at each position, but he seemed more like part of the mishmash rather than like, like Harrison Phillips was always just like an elevated stature player. Like he always, he would get rest days. He would always be with the ones, and Lowry seemed like he was just more with the rest of them.
It's like got to be in like Mike Pettin's contract that every year he can go sign some trash player and bring him into the starting lineup of the Vikings. It's like Kevin O'Connell and his crappy Rams. Like you just go get a guy that's not very good, but you know him.
He knows the system.
Under discussed too, from a pass rush standpoint, Mike Smith has been absent from the team for a while.
It's true.
Yeah,
that's a good point. Yeah.
But
do we have any updates on that situation?
We don't have details or updates. Just a personal situation that's kept him away from the team for beyond just the last 2 weeks. Like
very often a personal situation lasts a couple of days. So in football terms, not like that's not how real life works. I understand.
Right.
But like with those inside linebackers, a lot of those big run plays, you had like Ivan Pace at 1 tech, standing up over the ball, mugging the A gap like he was going to blitz, and he just gets killed by a center because he's a linebacker, and Brian Asamoah next to him, and like Jordan Hicks, it was happening too. So you did not have you just ended up with like flattened out fronts, but with smaller dudes. And it's like, well, of course, the Eagles are just going to be like, oh, okay, we'll take that and run directly into it every single time you do it. But I think if we're looking for like culprits, it's linebackers not being able to hold their ground against linemen, which I don't know how much of that you actually expect. Why are they in that position, right? And then Dean Lowry, I don't think doing well enough for the position that he plays. In terms of Tonga and Bullard, I saw Tonga get washed out a couple times. Bullard had a couple of his bad ones, but I didn't think it was quite as bad.
Ivan Pace update. Now that we've got a lot of week 2 data on PFF, number 7 amongst all linebackers. He's so good.
Yeah, he is.
He's fun to watch. He flies around. He hits people hard. Like, that's what a misevaluation. What an absolute draft travesty.
Yeah. The whole justice for short kings. Like,
hey, the draft industry knew. He was the 4th ranked UDFA. Mm-hmm. He was graded as draftable. He's in the top 200.
Yep.
What's going on there?
Definitely.
Learn something about somebody, and then you have like 6 weeks to think about it before you actually have to go draft.
So that's a bright spot with the D line. And while we're taking inventory, how are we feeling about the secondary? Because if you're selling out against the pass, man, you can't give up those deep balls. I know one of them was Theo Jackson.
One of them was Theo Jackson.
Theo Jackson was in good. I mean, he was recovering. Like, obviously, he got beat, but he was in good recovery position.
Yeah, he could have made a play out of phase.
The ball.
Or he tried to make a play out of phase. It just didn't get there.
And that's how you would teach a player out of phase to make that play. Is what I like. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a hard thing to do. You kind of just get your hands up and hope. And then the other one, I think, was some kind of miscommunication. I don't want to quite use the word coverage bust, but Caleb Evans looked like he was looking for inside help. I don't think he was correct to think he had inside help. But if you look at like his body language on that play, he's looking back at Harrison Smith like, where were you?
What's going on? I'm not that concerned about the secondary. Obviously, they could be playing better, right? Like, there's no...
Yeah.
But I think for the most part, they're playing ahead of your expectations given kind of who they are, right? Like, you've got kind of the top free agent corner in a weak free agency class. He's playing well. You've got a 4th round second year player. He's playing much better than 4th rounder cornerbacks typically do. You've got a rookie 3rd round pick. He's playing all right. He's not seeing the field as often as like that 3rd safety is, who's a 6th round 4th year player who was playing pretty well before he got injured. So like, in terms of the level of investment the Vikings have made at that position, and Cameron Bynum is playing out of his mind, which, by the way, that needs to be
he is.
I think that given the level of investment the Vikings have made, I think they're playing better than you would expect. The investments the Vikings have made is a different question, right? And is the state of the secondary acceptable for a team that wants to make the playoffs? Not quite, but I'm not ringing any alarm bells. To me, the bigger issue is, first of all, luck. It's luck related. But second, I think the bigger issue, and when I say luck, this is a really important thing. I only mean that from an outside analyst perspective. Like, the things that regress might as well be luck, but that does not mean that they are, from a football perspective, luck. Fumble recovery is a skill, right? You can get better at it. But the problem is there's a cap to how much better you can get. And so in the long run, every team has a 50% fumble recovery rate. From our perspective, it's luck because teams tend to correct, right? It's the same thing in a lot of aspects of sports where a thing that is relatively easily correctable but has a high impact tends to be corrected quickly. And so from our perspective, it's not that different from luck. So that's my thing, is that fumble recovery is something that the Vikings will continue to focus on and then we'll get better at. So I'm not concerned about that. So that's kind of, but I think like it's tough because I think when I take a look at a bunch of individual Vikings plays, throw on the film, take a look at it, I mostly like what I see, especially when I compare it to last year. And then I check the numbers and I look at their points per drive and it's awful. I look at their field position adjusted points per drive and it's not great. I look at their EPA, it's whatever, right? Like, so it's like they're like 20th in defensive EPA, which is better right. Like, but when I take a look at the plays themselves, it's like, yeah, they kind of got beat up in the run game here. I am not confident that this is so alarming that I would say that this defense is doomed. Right. So that's kind of where I'm at. Is that the vibes I get are positive. The results so far, not yet.
Yeah, Eagles are good. Eagles are a bad matchup for the Vikings. It's
from
easy
a
to see why
coverage.
Yep, go ahead.
From a coverage perspective too, they've had a hell of a couple of receiving cores that they've gone up against, and they've got another one coming up, and then they got the Chiefs, which is a different challenge.
A coverage challenge, but not like a receiving core.
Yeah, a different kind of coverage challenge.
Yeah.
But I think they did very well against. I'm happy with how they did against the Eagles. It's just the two explosives ruin everything, which is what explosives are for.
Yeah, the Vikings success rate and EPA allowed great in the passing game.
Yeah, and they got that by dropping 8 a whole bunch, which I usually hate. It worked great. They got that.
They kind of get pressure when they rush 3. They're not good.
They got coverage sacks. Like they just nobody was there.
Yeah.
It worked.
Yeah.
So it's like, all right, I guess go for it, Brian Flores.
Do your thing.
And I think if you asked me, 10 days ago, what do you think the biggest problem with the Vikings is? I mean, my answer for the whole offseason was secondary. That secondary that cornerback room is, not up to par, and that just has not been the biggest problem. And I think if you just look at it, like you get on average 12 possessions a game, something like that, 11, 12 possessions a game.
12 is average. Yep.
The Vikings have, so they've had, I think they actually have had exactly 24 possessions, depending on how you count stuff like kneeling at the end of the half.
Like end of game. Yeah.
Yeah. They have pissed away 7 of them via turnover.
So a third of them almost.
Yeah. Yikes, dog. That's the problem.
Whoa.
Everything else has been up and down. There are things to improve, right? Like, I'm not saying other stuff isn't a problem, but it feels like everything is so overshadowed by that.
Our discussions can only be built around this turnover. Like, we can have all these discussions, but the scaffolding that they surround is made of turnovers, right?
Yeah.
Like, for example, okay, the Vikings success rate, I just looked this up. The Vikings success rate against opponent dropbacks, right? So the percentage of plays where an opponent gets positive EPA. The average in the NFL is 47% on dropbacks, right? The Vikings rank 5th at 35.7%. That is the defensive success rate against opponent dropbacks. That is meaningful. It's like, obviously you want to cut down on explosives, right? But like, what are you going to tell Theo Jackson to do differently? Not get burned? Like, okay, fine. He's the 4th safety. Like, I don't know. It's like, for the most part, the secondary is, and when you turn on like the all 22, the secondary is not like killing it. I think a lot of it is structure, like forcing guys to throw across the field on play action. Is there breaking news?
Yes.
You're not going to believe this. Look who's here.
Hey, you all right, man? You still got COVID?
Thanks for having me, guys. You guys waited? How's my voice?
Are you grinding through COVID right now?
Just grinded, dude.
Absolute warrior.
Day
flu
4.
game.
I'm on the injury report. I'm in the ice tub. I'm getting cryo, but you know
Limited
what?
illness.
I made it. Thanks
That's
for having
great.
me.
Incredible.
You guys waited? You guys waited?
Yeah,
right?
we just started.
Yeah,
dude.
we're starting right now. As I was saying at the beginning of our episode, I don't know that the secondary is playing remarkable, but I think that the structure of the defense, if you force a guy to throw halfway across the field on play action and that guy happens to be open, like, I don't know how much of that is a quarterback's fault, is kind of what I was finally getting at the end there.
Spinman, it's good to see you, by the way. So through the haze, through the brain fog, what'd you make of Thursday's game? We got to get your take. Oh my gosh.
I mean, I didn't feel
That's
great
not-
about Thursday's game, but I don't know if I felt
not
that
even
bad.
That was perfect.
unbelievably on brand and still unbelievable.
That's
Oh,
pretty
I'm gonna
impressive,
get it.
man.
I'm gonna
Couldn't have
watch my
timed
phone
that
for
better
I'm gonna get the
comedically.
text. I'm guessing power outage.
That would be amazing.
I've just got a gut
The thing
feeling.
of it- the thing of it, boys, is
Well, now Braun's muted.
Keep that up.
All
Don't
right.
worry about that.
Well, we're gonna leave that box open in honor of Spinman. Let's. I've got a nerdy stat of the day about success
sure.
rate. Let's do that.
Analytics fans rejoice. It's time to get educated
Whoa, you're blowing my mind right now.
with the nerdy stat of the day.
Alexander Mattison went through something last week that I wouldn't wish upon anybody. Racist abuse on social media. Come on, people, be better. So I want to try to, I found a pro Alexander Mattison nerdy stat of the day because people were ripping him, ripping the running game, ripping the fumbles. How about this? Out of 42 qualified running backs through 2 weeks, Alexander Mattison is 13th in success rate.
Yeah, he had a 45% success rate in week 1, which was one of the highest in the NFL. This is one reason I don't like using yards per carry for running backs. It is much more important for a running back to keep your offense on schedule than it is for them to occasionally pop a 40-yarder. That generally leads to positive outcomes on the offense more than anything else. So even EPA in rushing is less correlated to success than success rate when rushing. And that, I think, is the reason Mattison has gotten the run that he has. Obviously, you're not getting explosives, right? But yeah, I mean, he doesn't obviously against the Eagles it was a little bit more difficult to not generate negatives. So his success rate dropped to something like 39%, 38% against the Eagles, which is not great. But the Vikings success rate running when it's not Mattison is actually significantly lower. Whether or not you want to include Cousins in that, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Ty 4 or 5
yeah.
attempts. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's
It's extremely hard for me to look at this situation and say, oh, this is because they don't have Dalvin Cook. I mean, the yards before contact are negative. It's awful.
Some of that is controlled by the running back, but I agree that the blocking has been remarkably subpar.
And I haven't looked at expected yards on Next Gen at all. But Braun, we talked about this a little bit in the postcast. This line, they were all drafted with the intention to be excellent run blockers within sort of that scheme. And now in this different scheme, it has not worked out the same way. Do you have any read on why it's gone the way it has?
It's not that different of a scheme. And I think it was Ron that said in the postcast, they're built to pass block more than run block. And I guess that's kind of how it's borne out, because I'm pretty sure the pass blocking has been pretty good when it's not about is there a free rusher, but if it's just did the guys win? I'm actually going to look that up right now and make it my nerdy stat, but you got to give me a second. But yeah, it's
12th MPFF pass block rate, which is not your nerdy stat, so I didn't bogart you.
All right, cool. I'll be way more basic with mine. But they just aren't moving people. I mean, that's what it is. They aren't getting the push that you need on certain kinds of duo runs where you're really just kind of hoping that you get 4 yards and the running back just kind of crashes into the back of it, and that's that. When that gets, a half yard of push and that's the play, that's not there. And it's just kind of an issue. It's the same issue on both sides of the trenches. We have guys that are too small and less powerful than the guys across from them.
Well, you tap dance and get that nerdy stat. Arif, do you have a nerdy stat on hand?
Yeah, I published it in my post-game presser. It's about 0-2 teams, right? So obviously 0 Tombstone is the thing, right? Only 1 in 10 teams, make the playoffs after going 0-2 after you account for the 14th and 13th seeds in the playoffs. Okay, fine. Great. First of all, I don't know why that matters. If there's a 1 in 10 chance that you can make the playoffs, you play like you can make the playoffs, right? But second, if you get rid of all the teams that in that 0-2 stretch played extremely poorly, guess what? Your odds increase really dramatically of making the playoffs, because the reason most 0-2 teams don't make the playoffs is because they went 0-2 because they are bad at football. And I don't think the Vikings have demonstrated that they're bad at football. They're losing close games. They're losing because of fluky events like turnovers. So I looked at 0-2 teams based off of their expected points per play on non-turnover plays. And I wanted to see first if that metric helped predict the likelihood of making the playoffs better than including turnovers. Spoiler, it did. Second, I looked at if you were positive in net EPA per play on non-turnover plays, how likely you were to make the playoffs. And then I looked also at how likely you were to make the playoffs if you were close to the Vikings net EPA. So you were in a 17-game kind of season in a 14-team playoff. Your odds of making the playoffs if you were positive in EPA, let me take a look at this. The playoff make rate is 24%, and in a 14 playoff bracket is 33%. But the Vikings aren't just positive in EPA. They're one of the best EPA non-turnover teams in the history of 0-2 football.
Wow.
Which is, I know, if print the banners, right? Hang them up.
Best
right?
0-2 team ever. Absolutely.
Yeah. Third best. But
Third best.
but
The bronze medal. We take those.
Yeah, we take those. So the Cincinnati Bengals are the number one. Last year, Cincinnati Bengals are number one since the 1970s in this statistic, which they made the playoffs, right? So count it. Number three or the previous number three were the Philadelphia Eagles in 2003. They made the playoffs, right? Number two is this weird Miami Dolphins team that had like 8 players hold out. Very weird situation. Their coach left halfway through this. I shouldn't say left, was fired halfway through the season. We're not going to count them. So the Vikings are number two among playoff teams. And people with, or teams with a plus 0.1 expected points per play on non-turnover plays make the playoffs in a 14-team group 55% of the time. 55!
We're back. We're back, baby.
We're so back.
We're so back.
The Vikings are back. There's life. There's a pulse. That's really good research, Arif. Thank you. Very nerdy. Luke Braun.
I love post.substack.com.
Great website. Luke Braun, what do you got?
So I got distracted while looking up pressures. I found the page of PFF's data for like assigning the blame for pressures, and I just decided, what QB is responsible for the highest percentage of their pressures according to PFF? It's Jordan Love. And then I went, which QB has the most pressures that they are responsible for according to PFF? It's Justin Fields. So that should be fun with all the blitzing.
Yes. Let's talk about Justin Fields and Jordan Love and the NFC North chokes on Sunday. NFC North goes 0-4. Vikings don't lose ground in the division. It was I'm a red zone guy when the Vikings aren't playing. It was a great Scott Hansen witching hour. The 2-3 block yesterday, Central Time.
Incredible.
So unbelievable. I love the NFL. It was Titans Chargers overtime. It was Lions Seahawks overtime. It was Packers punting over and over again, giving the game back to the Falcons. And those were just the 3 best games. There was a few others that were good too. The Chiefs and Jaguars came down to the wire, and the Jaguars had like 3 catches to potentially tie that game where the guy had like 1 foot in and 1 foot out. Like insanely close to that one, which would have given Luke Inman, by the way, his parlay win, which we'll get to.
Remember you forever, Luke.
I got the text, by the way. He said, rebooting my router.
Oh, good.
So, but what was the best thing you guys saw on the Sunday of football and NFC North mediocrity?
Man, there was so much. I think I have to, maybe this is a recency bias thing, but Cole Strange catching the improvised lateral for Mike Gesicki to try and convert that 4th down, which I know that he didn't technically.
Yeah, definitely short. Good, correct call, but not fun. Not
no,
fun
and what this is where I don't think even the words correct call should be uttered. I think it should not even be in the realm of circumstance that we consider that the correct call. When you have an opportunity to encourage the funniest football plays you can possibly imagine, why would you step away from that? That's crazy. I think it was close. Like the thing about the rule of cool is that it has to be close enough that you can see it. And that was close enough that you could see it. And I know that there's billions on the line here, right? I know that like you gotta enforce the rules fairly for football to mean anything. And to me, fair means plays like that. If you're not covering the tackle on a lateral, you're not playing football. Cover Cole Strange better next time.
Who was on him? Whose guy was that? They busted the coverage.
They busted the coverage. That was amazing. And it just sucks that the refs didn't see the vision.
Okay, I've got a refereeing tip, and maybe they do this, and I'm just not like, maybe they're trained to do this, and I'm not aware.
Referee,
but when
tip,
there
don't
is
be
a
square, yeah, I agree.
When there's a fresh set of downs, so you're setting the ball on 1st and 10.
Mhm.
Let's just make it mandatory that the ball is placed on the nearest exact, like if let's say up until the 20-yard line, you do this. Place the ball on the nearest exact yard line so that it's clear and obvious what the line to gain is. So that if the ball reaches the exact 29, it's a first down. And there's none of this in between the hash mark stuff. It would take there would be no measurements, right? There would be no need to rely on the ambiguity of the chain because the spot would be on the exact yard line. When
I just want to I don't know how I feel about this. I kind of like it, but separate question: do they audit the chains? Do they at the end of the year, take the SI scientific standard measurement of 10 yards and measure that against what the chains actually did? Or they're like, hey, this chain got stretched out a little bit. Have we been screwing some offenses with these chains? Do they audit the chains?
I'm always perplexed by why the chains seem so heavy when they're stretching it out to the ball. It's like the ref has to lug a 50-pound weight. I
think he does.
And they all, it's like, it's going to be short.
You can't make important pieces of equipment like that out of plastic. Plastic bends.
There's always more chain. It's like, this is not going to be a first down. There's more chain. There's more chain.
That's the best part.
It's like never taught when
I don't want
run
them to switch to lasers.
He's short.
Is the reveal that the chain was folded and they just pull it and you're like, that's the best part.
The chains are great. The chains are great. I like the chains, but I also like my reffing adjustment way. What's the harm? Literally, what's the harm in what I just suggested? Is that you just start on an exact yard line.
If the refs were accurate in spotting the ball, I would say I probably wouldn't be in favor of it. But they're really subjective about it anyway.
Yeah, they miss by that much often enough.
Yeah, so you might as well, right?
But wouldn't it help it's more for the review process? Because that's where it's messy. Yeah. It's like,
I know.
And the cost would be less precision after plays, which we don't have anyways. So sure.
Exactly. I'm saying that there's no cost to your proposal because, like Luke said, there's already no precision. So the benefit, it's pure profit, baby. We're just cooking with a rule change that only has upside.
And I'm not saying
at least inside the 20s. I agree. Once you get close,
get close. And I'm saying be precise on 2nd down, 3rd down, 4th down. But when it's a fresh set, then you are then you're imprecise. Then you reset the chains. You've got an exact marker you're going for. It would help the players know exactly what they're trying to get. I think that, and I don't know if this has ever been toyed around with or if they do it and we just don't know about it, but I think it makes a lot of sense.
Here's a stupider proposal than yours, Sam. Make the yellow line official. Done.
There's got to be a chip, or
chips are dumb.
The chip would never know when the knee was down. That's the problem.
Exactly. Yeah. The chips are as subjective as anything else.
They would take the subjectivity out of it because then it would become the sensor tripped off that it went over, and now we just have to kind of determine when that was, versus having to determine when it was and where it was.
The act of syncing that with the replay would be a tremendous technical task. It would be very difficult to figure out.
I think so would making the yellow line official, because that thing is bunk a bunch of the time.
Yeah, but
it's just like some guy going, that looks like
I did say it was worse than Sam's proposal. I just think it's funny.
It is funny.
Since we're talking rules, I know, Braun, I think you tweeted in support, maybe it was you, of keeping the fumble through the end zone rule that people
Absolutely
were up
not.
in arms
that
about.
Rule can die in hell.
Oh, you hate the rule. Okay.
Yeah.
Someone else was saying that it's fine. Okay, what's the suggestion then? What do you do?
It goes
How do you
back
punish that?
to where you fumbled it. If you
Spot of the
fumble through
fumble?
the end zone, that is a live ball, so you're risking losing your possession. But I think that for the defense to get the ball, the defense should have to get the ball. I
They
think
should
that's
do the work.
intuitive.
They're being what this is a participation trophy for
It
defenses.
is. Yes.
Like it's so crazy the way people talk about this as if there's only one side of the ball that has responsibility.
Right. It's like, don't
to play
fumble. Well,
good.
pick it up then if you want the ball. Go
Yeah,
get the ball
right,
if
yeah.
you want the ball.
Like I understand that like people like I know that there's a certain sect of people whose only issue with the rule is the consistency, right? Like when you fumble at the sideline, that retains the offense, but except at the end zone, it's the defense.
I can be sympathetic to that too. If you
And
want
I
to say,
get
okay,
that,
all
but
fumbles
that's
out of
not-
bounds go to the defense, it's like that's chaos. But you know what? I would rather have it.
Right, and I get that, right? And so I'm sympathetic to that, but that's not really my thing. My thing is that the defense needs to finish the job.
Yeah.
Like the one thing that I would change actually is when you fumble and the ball goes out of bounds, the ball goes back to the offense where they fumbled it and not where it goes out of bounds.
Exactly.
And that way, you know, there's no fumble forward. I know that one player objected to changing the rule because you could just fumble it forward, which you can't. You're turning into a live ball. That's crazy. Like, I know there's a holy roller rule for a reason, but for the most part, like, that's an insane idea. Like, you wouldn't do that. So that's not really a huge concern, but you can solve that concern just by saying, hey, if it goes out of bounds or whatever, like the only way you can advance it is by recovering it. If it goes out of bounds, then it goes back to where you fumbled it, and that resolves this touchback thing too, right?
And I would even
Jefferson fumbles it at the 0 yard line. That's where the ball is.
Exactly. And I would even cede if you fumble that ball, you can no longer advance that ball. And that to me feels like an adequate punishment
fine.
for fumbling. Like, don't fumble the ball. Now you can't advance it. Play has to be over. All you can do is recover it.
Yeah.
And like that,
the defense is allowed to advance,
exactly,
but not the offense. Yeah.
So now the defense is in an advantageous position, but they still have to like do anything.
Yeah, do the work, finish the job.
You should never get a ball you didn't get a hand
people
on.
Who cover a team that has not recovered a fumble all year. Like, you got to recover fumbles.
Yeah, trust us. You got to recover fumbles.
Yeah, if anybody, you know, we'd say the opposite, but no, you got to recover fumbles. So that's my take.
Like you said earlier, it's a skill.
Don't reward the defense for not finishing the job.
Right.
I don't think you're ever going to really convince ball carriers and receivers to not stretch for it either. Like that's
the other thing. The NFL puts that in their sizzle reel. You cannot be discouraging that with your rules.
Let's
NFL, you love
awesome
that.
plays again. Like again,
yeah.
Our understanding of the rules should include a framework of does this encourage awesome plays, and the fumble rule does not encourage awesome plays. We should definitely encourage plays that are cool as hell.
Didn't a team win? The Seahawks won yesterday on a reach for the pylon situation.
A lot of teams do all the time. Belichick is the only coach I know that actually means it when he says don't reach for the pylon. All the other coaches say it, and they're just like, I don't know.
Yeah, you finished. Good job, JJ.
Didn't James White win a Super Bowl with a play like that where he reached for the goal line? I don't know if it was by the pylon that much, but the 28-3 game. So
kind of dove in.
Yeah. And then they had to review it, and it kind of harshed the mellow of the moment. Parlays did not go well, though they did go a little better than week one. I think we went
we all won one of them, right?
Yeah. We went 1-7 combined on each leg in week one. This week we were 50-50. The problem is everybody was 50-50 and nobody got 2. Inman, who we bet for, went Jefferson over. We went Jefferson over on yardage, hit. Jags plus 3.5 miss. He's down to 900.
Very closely hewed to the spirit of Inman bets too.
Yeah. The fact that he lost on the Jags bet felt like we did perfect.
Yeah.
And that's what happened to him all last year. He rode the Jags, rode the Jags, got off the bandwagon, and then they started winning. Yeah. Braun, you had already lost on Hurts passing yards, but you did hit Raiders Bills over by a point. Good
How many yards did he end up with?
Wasn't close. Wasn't it under 200?
Under 200 yards for Jalen Hurts with two 60-plus yards explosives?
He was bad, man. He was
a crazy. I'm trying to find it.
Yeah, I've got it right here.
Oh, yeah.
It was 193.
Oh, 193, yeah.
Yeah.
That's Oh man, and he did worse against New England. What's going on?
35 rushing yards, was short of the 50 that Arif needed. Arif
Eagles?
did hit
One
Chiefs.
score games? Fraud watch?
Ooh. Yeah, I
I
don't know
mean,
if you can run the
put it on
ball
the
that
board.
Well, though, if they figure out the passing game at all.
It's a pretty big if, right?
I had Bills -8.5. I loved that bet. I nailed that bet. And then the Lions scored 4 times, and none of them were to Jahmyr Gibbs. So I lost 2.
Yeah, well, you're probably not going to have to worry about that going forward. He's the only running back left on the roster.
Yeah, Montgomery went out in the middle of that game
Correct.
and even had more opportunities, but alas,
Correct.
too much Josh Reynolds usage.
It's annoying. I was so correct on my process for the Jalen Hurts rushing over too. Vikings gave up 200 yards. Like, come on,
They did.
man.
The part of it, a big part of it was
59
that
yards.
a lot of times their backside linebacker would key on the quarterback, so it was always wrong for Hurts to keep it.
Not my problem, Hurts.
It was kind of like I did a big Rashad White
and he kept it into it a couple times. Didn't go great. He tried for you, man.
He did try. He was fighting for me. I shouldn't be mad at him. He was doing it for me.
I did a big Rashad White prediction in week 1. I'm like, this guy only needs about 10 carries and he gets like 40. He gets the 44-yard over/under, and then he had like the worst yards under expected in next gen history in that game. He was like 38 yards under expected on a 40-yard day. Just insane. By the way, we didn't really talk NFC North in that discussion. Lions and Packers both choked those games away. Did we learn anything meaningful?
Jordan, I'm giving Jordan Love a little bit more benefit of the doubt. I still need to see more against a real defense, but he's probably an average quarterback. And Jared Goff, I've just been dogging way too much. This guy can ball. I'm mad.
Threw his first pick in 9 games, something absurd like that. Lions defense came back to earth considerably, though, Braun. They gave up points in 4 of the last 5 possessions.
Seattle doesn't have offensive tackles. How can they not rush the passer with the investments they've made?
Isn't that interesting?
I do think the Lions are a problem, though. I think they're gonna win games.
If they don't win the NFC North, it is a colossal choke. Like,
very funny.
Everybody else is struggling so bad.
They could do they could go 7-1 to start the season, and then they could do a reverse.
There's a bunch of ways they could Lions this.
Yeah,
I will say that I'm not sold on the Packers because the Bears are really bad. They beat the Bears and they choked it away against the Falcons. And Jordan Love if you're worried about like the next clutch quarterback coming along, he had about the feeblest 4 and out that I've ever seen to end that game. That was rough.
I'm not going to say in his defense, but rather for some context, Aaron Rodgers was famously unclutch for like the first 5-6 years of his career. He was playing extremely well, but like people would throw around like he's 0-37 against winning teams when trailing in the fourth quarter. Like they would throw that out there, and he just was. And then he hit a Hail Mary against the Lions, and suddenly he was the clutchest quarterback. And it persisted. That's the problem. Yeah. It just like he just kept on like winning these late game scenarios that he just wouldn't in the past. So we've got at least 5 or 6 years before Jordan Love can win a close game.
Fair enough.
He's not allowed.
He's not
allowed.
Context.
He was missing his best running back, best receiver, best tackle.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Can we take a moment to enjoy that Justin Fields threw a pick 6 on a running back screen on his own goal line?
Yeah.
Oh, and like looking at it, like it was
like I would call it again. Right?
Yeah,
that was the best part.
and Chase Claypool had some weird stuff to say, like they're starting to tear each other apart. It's week 2.
Week 2.
And this has like December of
like
2021 Vikings vibes.
Like, Sam, did you see this? Like, before the game, like, a bunch of news came out that Claypool had to apologize to the team for his lack of effort after a week of football, right? Like, they had a meeting.
Well, that's fair.
They had.
You see that blocking reel?
Yeah. They had, like, a meeting with him. He apologized to the rest of the team. He was like, I've been a bad locker room guy. And it's like, dog, it's like
vibes are so bad around him.
It's September, man. Holy,
like this is
crap.
Interim coach stuff.
And then he did like play well, but still, it's just.
And then, yeah, Baldy did the breakdown last week of how hapless they were in the red zone. And then yesterday,
Did
two
you see
picks,
the
sacks.
touchdown he missed?
Yesterday?
Yeah, there's like a screenshot that goes around. It's basically the Mitch Trubisky. There's an open tight end in the end zone, but it's for Justin Fields in bright orange instead, and it's this guy who's just wide open. There's no one covering him, wide open, and like it sucks because it's like sometimes that guy's not in the. It's the Jared Goff discussion, right? Sometimes that guy's not in the progression.
Yeah,
but
screenshot problem.
Yeah, but like, there's no one. There's no one on him. It's not like someone busted a coverage and is like catching up. It's like they might as well have played with 10 people on the field. There's no one on him. It's just like, bud. If you're spending 3 seconds in the pocket, you got to see that one. Sure, 1.5 seconds, fine. You missed that guy. That happens. 3 seconds? What are you doing back there?
I hope JT O'Sullivan has another hour-long jam session in him.
Yeah. If Bryce Young is remotely good, Bears fans might just all jump off the wagon. Like it might be.
Dude,
well, they already got the Jalen Carter problem. It's just like,
yeah.
Just fumble after fumble after
Dude,
fumble.
When JT O'Sullivan doesn't like a guy, it's so funny because it starts off small. He's just like, I don't know about this route running technique. And then this particular technique, not for me. This is not for me.
It's literally just saying like, F you, bro.
Yeah, and he's like, go to the sideline, get some Gatorade. This is a long session. It's so good. It's so good.
Oh, man.
And they're like genuine, like some of the most informative football content that exists out there. I put it up against anybody.
Yeah,
but
very
like,
good.
Incredible. When he's just like, when he's had it, it's incredible.
Programming note, we do this show Mondays and Thursdays with this group. The video lives here on Locked On Sports Minnesota. We have moved the audio to Locked On Vikings, the Luke Braun feed. So that's where you can find the audio of the show in case you hadn't previously heard that. We also have post-game reactions on the Locked On Vikings audio feed and right here on Locked On Sports Minnesota. For Arif, thank you, Arif. Subscribe to his Wide Left Substack. Luke Braun, Locked On Vikings host, and Luke Inman. Thank you for your contribution today, buddy. At Luke_Spinman.
We kept the box open for you the whole time.
His computer is like sparks are coming out of it. Might be on fire. I just picture like the old school computer tower. Like, you know, the towers we used to have, like that were just like when the computer was old, they would just hum. They would just
that thing's getting ready for takeoff.
That's what's happening. Man, he was going to have a hot take on that game, too. I could just feel it. He was winding up in that.
Honestly, the computer was protecting us.
Right. From combusting. Yeah.
He melted his computer.
That's the Minnesota Football Party today. Ron Johnson Show tomorrow on Locked On Sports Minnesota. Until then, I'm Sam Ekstrom. He's Arif. He's Luke. Thanks for watching. You're on Locked On Sports Minnesota.